Can't go Rolls truck without the stars. Go swap for another one. And welcome to Shift+F1, a podcast about speedy race cars. That, of course, is Miami's own DJ Khaled. Another one. It's been that way this year in the Formula One season with Max Verstappen's dominance. Would things be any different in the Sunshine State? Is that what it's called? Is it the Sunshine State, Rob Zachney?
I think, yes. The Garden State preposterously is Jersey, and only that because of the movie.
Okay, you're right. Who knows? What's Ohio? The Middle State.
What is Ohio? Damn, I have no. Is it just the Buckeye State?
Buckeye? Oh yeah, that's a good one. Answers on a postcard, folks. Shift+F1podcast@gmail.com. It is just myself and Rob this week, and it's going to be a fantastic podcast because we forgot that Drew was not going to be here until about 2 minutes before the recording of this podcast. So we have been scrambling to do all of the incredible research and notes that Drew Scanlon does every week, and most of my time, to be frank, was spent looking up DJ Khaled lyrics. So hopefully Rob is pulling his weight over there. We have a lot to talk about is the thing. We do have some news from the weekend. Obviously it was a sprint race as well in Miami, so we have two races to talk about, as well as two qualifying sessions and a tiny little practice session as well. But before we do that, massive thanks to all of our incredible title sponsors: Get Rich or Die Ryan, Agave ATX, Cyphus Training, Turf SES, at Team Blackjack, Michael Maves, Gordy's Army, at Talking Autos, Olivia Evans, TelemetryDeck.com, FTC, Drew Stewart, Bailey Foot, Abdullah Althani, Jason Chadwick, Abraham Getchell, The Space Above Us Podcast, Bunny, #Bunny Redacted, Snigs, Alex Goucher, Max Voltar, Circuit Demon, Troy Stammer, William Rumpf, Irvine Clinical Research, Lachlan the Maddened Man, Samurai Love Story, and Jason Kelly. Thank you all so much for supporting us over at patreon.com/shiftf1. Forgot to mention that at the top. And of course, if you're new to F1, just to get all this beautiful housekeeping done right at the start, you should check out our preseason primer. If you're completely fresh and new, if you're a little baby clicking on this podcast and thinking, man, I hope they can get me up to speed, this is probably not the one. Go over to episode 257. We do one every single year at the start of the season to let you know who the drivers are, where the circuits are, what the rules are, all that stuff. And if you want any extra goodies, of course, you can come on over to our Patreon. But we have things to talk about this week, Rob Zachney. Anything ahead before we jump into the race weekend? Were you?
Yeah, we have another packed weekend.
It was like, and also it was at a probably especially strange for you because you're on the East Coast. It was like Friday afternoon and there was F1 on, and I was like, oh, what's this about?
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of it, honestly. Vastly prefer to have my F1 waiting for me first thing in the morning. Not wild about F1 happening later in the afternoon, in the middle of the day. Feels just a bit wrong, to be honest. But also, I'm getting dangerously close to saying that F1 hacked it. They found the right weekend format.
Oh,
this could be coincidental, but I think we had another really good racing weekend. I think the way the qualies and the sprint set up the race, and they're all different. It feels now like it is working and generating a good arc through the weekend in the way that last year's nightmare mishmash was not, right? Let's do race qualifying and then let's do all our qualifying first and then do a race for some reason and then a different race. That didn't work. But it does feel now like let's get straight into sprint qualifying. Let's do a no holds barred race and then we can do the qualifying. Feels good having the Parc Fermé rules relax at a sensible point in the weekend, so people can change setups after the sprint. Yes. All of it now coheres, and maybe this is coincidental, right? There is no, as I think you and I both know, if there were a silver bullet solution to make for good racing weekends, F1 would have found it by now. They've tried just about everything under the sun. It just isn't that kind of sport, but it does feel like maybe the dice are a little better loaded here with how they've structured it.
Yeah, it's the other thing that's tripping me up as well, because without spoiling it, this was maybe a pretty good sprint weekend as well, is that both races have had sort of haphazard surfaces, maybe, or just surfaces that made it a little bit tricky to gauge, especially in sprint qualifying, where the car was. Obviously, I believe China also had rain, right? So there was that sort of thrown in the mix as well. And maybe this is also a byproduct of just not having that much rubber down. You know, you've only got one practice session before you're basically doing sprint qualifying that day. Practice. Did you watch practice at all? When did you sort of dial into to the weekend, as it were? Because I literally was in a meeting with somebody and they started talking about practice, and I was like, oh, is it on right now?
Yeah, I do, like, maybe I should be a practice watcher. I'm just not. But I tuned in for sprint qualifying.
Okay, cool. So the practice, I guess the main thing, you know, a lot of them were getting used to the track. I don't think there's any changes on last year, this year around. Time of year, I think, something similar. It was warm enough, the track was. The biggest incident that happened was Charles Leclerc doing a little Austin Powers impression. He spun his car in a fairly innocuous part of the track and ended up in an attempt to get it turned around to do the old, you know, burn the tires and do a half donut and get out of there. He ended up getting it caught halfway and they had to pull a red flag.
But yeah, either way, the punchline for this one was what? Like Leclerc burned out his clutch?
Oh, what did he? I actually didn't even notice that. Didn't even realize that. So onward to sprint qualifying. I got the results here. Anything sticks out to you in particular on this one?
I mean, there are a few moments. Bottas nearly having that big crash with Piastri because he doesn't know he's coming down the short main straight there, I think, in turn one, and so you know, Valtteri just started to make a normal turn on the corner, fully off it, I think, for like a cool down lap maybe, and Piastri just materialized at full speed on his inside, and he had, you know, for Valtteri it was, you know, the equivalent of, you know, a complete outburst. He told his engineer, you have to let me know someone's coming much earlier.
Yeah,
I think he picked up a penalty from that. Other things that jumped out at me. Well, first, I had just one note, one note near the top. Do we like the blue Ferrari trim?
Oh, Danny? God, yeah. We haven't talked about this. What
so this was in honor of what? Their partnership with HP?
Yeah, exactly. They tried to spin it as it was honor of like, oh, they used to wear these blue overalls back in the day. Look at all these pictures of Maranello in the 1960s. They're all wearing these cute overalls, and then you see because the whole weekend, the whole lead up to this, when they did it on social media, was kind of like, oh my God, are they going to come out with a blue car? Like that sounds absolutely crazy. And then they come out with a car that just has like a couple of blue stripes on it and a big dirty HP logo on the front wing. And you're like, oh, that's why they're doing blue, because they've partnered with HP. And now also isn't it like their official dirty name is now Scuderia Ferrari HP or something like that?
Oh gosh.
Presented by Hewlett Packard.
So are they going to have to carry the blue badging now?
So I don't know about the blue badge, because they said they're going to run that livery. Is it just in the American races? They said they're going to do it a couple of times.
We have so many of those now.
I know there's a lot of this going on, and it's.
Look, I will say this: I actually think the blue coveralls looked great.
They did. I agree.
You know what I mean? Like I think Ferrari's entire like fire suit game this year has just been incredible. The font on the racers' jackets looks awesome. Like I think they are the most dripped out team on the grid. I think the deep HP blue and the red livery didn't really go.
No.
It was like it had really strong like shitty Warhammer chapter vibes.
It's chalk and cheese. They don't nothing about them. Even the like italicized HP logo just doesn't work well with lots of things. I bet it's reminding me of my like graphic design days where there's like certain logos that just like you're like, fuck man, really? Like the angles on this thing are just not gonna work with anything. I did forget about that. That is true. Ferrari fans didn't. It was what they were talking about for much of the weekend, and I can't really blame them. I always worry though, the German Grand Prix Lederhosen that Mercedes did during that catastrophic race they had always comes to mind.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's probably your biggest example of vintage gone wrong, because they didn't commit to it. I think that was the thing. They cursed themselves by not committing to it because they still had to get all their branding shit on it. So rather than just having Toto in an old school suit or having people wearing like honest to God lederhosen. Instead, they were like, what if just F1 crap, but kind of lederhosen-y, kind of suit-like, and that's where it went wrong. They needed to commit. And they didn't, and they were punished for it.
I fear for the pit crew getting one of their little straps, braces caught on the wheel gun as the car is pulling out, and it just gets snagged. Bad times for everyone.
Yeah,
that's the
real nightmare stuff, and that's we end up with the no suspenders in F1. This will never happen.
People are like, why do they have that rule? Oh, let me spin you a yarn.
We don't want to talk about the suspenders incident. But yeah, beyond that, another heartbreaking qualifying for Williams. Just unable to catch a break. Is Alex Albon the sort of first session elimination by I think 43 hundredths was pretty brutal. They might have ended up deleting that time.
They did. They deleted his final one. Which handed his teammate and local boy Logan Sargent, local sergeant Logan Sargent, his first qualifying above his teammate. So there you go.
And they tried to shade him as like, well, he's never been faster than his teammate. Well, I guess he sort of was this time because Albon had a time.
Exactly.
Albon went way off. He did not set a good time. Like, he didn't have a lap that was faster than Logan. I'm sorry, it did break down that way. For once Logan did it, let's give that kid his dub.
Exactly. He may not have many left, so tough weekend I think for him as well. Just considering, well, I mean, it's not going to get much better.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, exactly.
So you just want to read the starting order for the sprint, then we can get into
let's go that direction because we started there. 20th Alex Albon, local sergeant Logan Sargent in 19th. Then we have the Kick Sauers going up the rear. 18th Valtteri Bottas, 17th Zhou Guanyu, 16th Pierre Gasly, 15th Yuki Tsunoda. Bad qualifying for Yuki. 14th Kevin Magnussen, 13th Esteban Ocon, 12th Lewis Hamilton, 11th George Russell. Mercedes really having trouble getting any grip in the tires this weekend. 10th for Nico Hulkenberg. Nice work. Remember now, he needs to get in the top 8 to get points. So good start from Nico, but he needs to get a little bit higher if he's going to get some points in the bag. Lando Norris got 9th. Fernando Alonso 8th. Lance Stroll 7th. We'll be talking about them in a second. Oscar Piastri in 6th. Carlos Sainz 5th. Daniel Ricciardo coming in 4th position out of the blue. A lot of questions about him, obviously. He's got to do it. If he wants that Red Bull seat, he's got to start making moves. Boom. Danny's in 4th. Sergio Perez in 3rd. Charles Leclerc in 2nd. And wouldn't you know it, another one. Max Verstappen in pole position. Shall I take the start of this one?
Yeah, absolutely.
2 big incidents at the start of this race. First of all, a not fantastic start from Charles Leclerc meant that Sergio Perez actually kind of got a bit of a bite on him. And as they turned into the first right-hander, they were fairly close. And unfortunately for Perez, he got squeezed out a little bit, which opened the door for the V-carb of Daniel Ricciardo to get all the way up into 3rd position. Meanwhile, in the background, we see a bit of a scuffle, and it takes a few replays to parse this one out. A coming together of 4 cars, or perhaps a coming... To me, Lewis Hamilton bailed out Lance Stroll on this one.
I kind of had that feeling too.
Okay. The crash as it happened was basically Lewis Hamilton diving down the inside of Fernando Alonso, not having enough traction to brake adequately. He hits Alonso hits into Stroll tags the back of Norris. Yeah, right? Norris almost got away, and he tagged him. If you frame by frame this one, Alonso is crashing into Stroll because Stroll is sort of taking the turn way too defensively. He sees Lando coming up the outside, and he turns in on Alonso. I'm not quite sure, but he's basically crashing into Alonso at the time Hamilton comes in.
The angle's very sharp.
It is.
Between those 2 cars from the aerial. Captures it very clearly. And yeah, Lance is just cutting across. Now, I guess what you could say is, from Lanza's perspective, Alonso should have plenty of room on the inside because no one should be down there. Because the other thing that is visible, Palmer talks about this in his analysis of a near identical incident in the race, is that, again, the temporary track thing. If you look at where it's rubbered in, that inside line at turn 1 is like chalk white gray compared to everything else that looks like normal rubbered in tarmac. Okay. So that inside line, even if it's more open, it's kind of fool's gold because it is such a bad racing surface compared to every other line that you'll get on it and you're driving on ice. So I guess maybe the theory, Alonso should have been able to come over because there shouldn't have been another car there in the first place. But I'm kind of with you. It certainly looked like Stroll was taking an angle that you would take if you're just doing laps, but you probably shouldn't take if you're at the start of a race and you expect other cars to be there. It seemed very, very, YOLO, right? It just didn't seem very interested in where other cars were positioned.
The only thing I think that saves him a little bit is the idea that Alonso was looking at Hamilton in his mirror the whole time and was maybe further to the left than he would have been if he wasn't looking at this Mercedes coming down the inside thinking, he's going to crash into me. Alonso was sort of like the meat in the sandwich and just trying his best to stay as close to both without hitting both kind of thing. But, even so, I think it would have been Alonso wasn't going to take that turn that much tighter. In the end, the ones who were punished the most for this were Stroll and Norris. Norris was out of the race immediately. He strolled across the track during the safety car, which got pulled, and then got a fine, I think. Did he? He did get it. Yeah. So he took a fine for that. I think a lap later, Stroll pulls in as well. His car is busted up, so he's out of the race too. Alonso in last for much of the start of this race.
Just one last thing. So Hamilton, no action from the stewards.
Yes.
They didn't see anything very wrong with it, even though I think, you could argue probably rather justly that, Hamilton is in the end the person who sort of triggers the collision. The only thing that I find notable there is Alonso's really been beating this drum lately that F1 has it in for non-Anglosphere drivers.
Okay. Right.
And to an extent, I think we've commented on the show before, commentators certainly discuss anyone outside the former Commonwealth differently than they do other drivers. I think that is it is palpable the degree to which there is a
bias, like a favoritism or something, or
there's a
warmth.
There's a pride and regard for Britishness in F1 commentary that is rarely seen outside of Gilbert and Sullivan production. But does it apply to the stewards? I don't know, but certainly Alonso, I think, floated this, during the race weekend when asked about this incident. Why no penalty for Hamilton? I think he did basically say, "Well, he's English, so of course they didn't give him a penalty because he's very sour about the penalties he's been assessed."
Yeah, look,
thinking that
he's thinking, "Look, man, I wiggled in front of an English guy who then didn't have the chops to deal with the dirty air and fucking binned his car in the last lap, and this guy crashes into 4 cars and doesn't get a slap on the wrist." So I can hear it.
Yeah, no, I do kind of see it. So yeah, it's just interesting context for how all this is gonna unfold.
How do you feel about it? Because to me, the only thing that's saving his ass is this is first lap, first corner. He
Hamilton?
Yeah. If this happens any other lap and he throws it down the inside and takes somebody out, he's getting the 10-second penalty probably.
I don't know. I still feel like they will. I still feel like the stewards are they're gonna do you for a first lap incident if it was particularly ill judged, but which this one probably was. if it causes this kind of multi-car. I mean, I forget what they did to Valtteri at Imola that one year, right? Where at the start of the race he wipes out like 7 cars or something. Now I think he wiped himself
that's the
out
thing.
In all that too. So you end up like you end up sort of a self-correcting
time served.
yeah, but no, I do kind of feel like it is striking they didn't hit him with a penalty here. But yeah, I think he probably could have caught one. The stewards were it feels like they're kind of all over the map across this weekend. We'll get into that, right? It's their decision making was varied.
We have more first lap incidents to talk about. Rob, you're the one in this pairing that has detailed notes. Could you take us through some of the next couple of laps?
Yeah, so Ricardo had an absolute hell of a start to the race. He was all the way up in P3. Perez had to sort of charge his way past. But by lap 5, you could really start to see the DRS train forming.
Yes.
Where the race was really kind of solidifying, I think, past P4, P5. And one of the running themes in this race is, in all of this, so the DRS train basically, I think, seems to form behind Magnussen.
Yes.
Hulkenberg draws away.
Yeah.
And Hulkenberg's also gapped from the leaders. So he's kind of on an island. And so once again, we have Hulkenberg in the points. And then we have Magnussen in a tail gunner scenario.
It's amazing. And should be noted that they are 7th and 8th, I believe, right? And these are the last 2 points paying positions in the sprint race. So this is, if they can hold on to this, it's pretty good for Haas.
And Hamilton is behind Magnussen, and it just turns into it was like
Do you know what this reminds?
You know how?
Can I say what this reminds me of? When I was a kid, I used to play. The Jeff Crammond Formula One games, the old ones. So the first one we had on the Amiga 600, and I was maybe 6 or 7 or something, or 8 when we got that, and I was terrible. I couldn't play the game, but I really liked it. So the way I would win races was I would turn off damage on my car and drive around the track backwards, taking everyone else out, so that I would win by default.
I did this with Papyrus's IndyCar racing.
You did? Okay,
well.
Great.
Yeah.
We have the same sickness. I'm so happy. This felt obviously not that bad, but this felt like K-Mag was just going to break every rule, and he didn't care about his own results. He just wanted to make sure that his boy did not get overtaken by Lewis Hamilton. It was hilarious. It kept getting worse and worse. That was the thing. I found it so funny.
I think something I find fascinating about it too is this is one of the in an economics professor, right, would talk about incentives and disincentives. This is a classic case of the incentives for him to drive this way are so much stronger than anything they can do to him.
Yeah.
Because for a backmarker team like Haas, points are so hard to come by that if you you are not going to drive 2 cars to optimal pace. If you got 1 car in the points, probably they both can't hold points paying positions. So of course you just tell the one driver by any means necessary, don't let anyone past you. And this happened at Jeddah earlier in the season, where he was clearly in I'm not driving for myself. I am driving to protect the team's points. And that opens up a ton of possibilities, because all these things like racing lines, rules, sporting regulations,
the track, the turns, whether or not you do them or just kind of drive around them.
The way it is all enforced is penalties on the driver.
Right.
It says nothing about the team. There's kind of and you can see why. There's kind of an ironclad principle. If one driver does something, you're going to penalize the team. That's a driver's decision.
Right.
You can't tell Nico Hulkenberg, sorry, your boy did X, so we're assessing both of you this much time. But that does open this possibility of you can just do whatever. And it's a rational play for the team to operate that way because ultimately those points are literally worth millions.
Right.
So it turns into what I was going to say is it kind of reminded me of like the Nemesis system in like Shadow of Mordor, where like sometimes like you keep fighting an enemy and he keeps coming back worse each time.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what seemed to be unfolding with Magnussen. First thing happens, I think, first note I have is Magnussen, fighting to stay ahead of Hamilton, gets the entry to the chicane wrong, just cuts it, just goes straight across, high speed.
Yeah,
he
gains
speed on it.
Track limits, that's fine. I can, I'll take it. Was it much of the fight was happening on the back straight, the big long straight, and Hamilton must be getting frustrated not just by the fact that Magnussen is basically on all these turns. He's either forcing him out wide, he's blocking him maybe 1.5 times on the straights. He's doing all manner of that sort of stuff. But the Mercedes just can't get past him, and the Mercedes can't get past a Haas on one of the longest DRS straights on the calendar. Like
this is the other. There's an element of humiliation happening here, right? Where Magnussen shouldn't be able to do this to you. Like if you were a shadow of the team you were a few years ago, this just couldn't happen.
Yeah.
But now it can. Because he just can't get around him. But the other thing is he starts getting penalties faster than the stewards can process them. I want to say like on lap 11 they bang wheels as he's being assessed a penalty for cutting the chicane.
Hamilton
he starts getting
almost had him, and then he came up the inside and tap.
Yeah, and then like the enraging irony of this, I'm sure, is that lap 14,
so
Magnussen is being shown a black and white flag, but they go into it again around that chicane, and Magnussen crosses Hamilton up so badly. They both end up running off the track, and Tsunoda zips around the outside and gets both of them.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. I was laughing. There's a shot here. I forget. I have to watch it again. There's a shot here when it happens where, and this has been a DRS train for a while, but by the time they get down to the turn this time, they are like fucking Dodgem cars, like bumper to bumper behind. You can see like 7 cars in the shot. They're all just waiting to get into the car park. And Tsunoda, like Hamilton had him on the way into like he was ahead, and then Hamilton was like, I don't know where to put the car. If I put it off the inside, I'm going to run wide again. If I put it on the outside, he's going to throw himself up the middle. So I'm kind of going to stay in the middle of the track and try and make it around. And Magnussen just throws his car down the inside, forces them both out wide. And Yuki, almost knowing it was going to happen because he'd probably seen it, he's watched every one of these attempts. He just takes a regular line and they just go whoop off the edge, and he just goes thank you and skims past them. And just chaos.
Hamilton ends up down to Tsunoda across all this. I think Tsunoda only got Hamilton in that corner. I think he took Magnussen
you're right.
later.
Yeah, he got him.
But either way, Hamilton yet again lost more ground. By lap 16, Magnussen was carrying 20 seconds in penalties amassed over the race. So it was, and one of my notes here around lap 15, the sprint feels like international waters. You remember that Simpsons episode where it's like anything goes in international waters?
Exactly.
But I think this is actually why, like, these guys race so differently when there's no, forget protecting your tires. This is it. There's no pit strategy.
Yeah.
And for those cars that end up like in a longer race, anytime a car is like running ahead of really where it should be, you'll hear the commentators say like, well, his race isn't with that Ferrari. His race isn't with that.
Yes.
And so they just concede the spots, right?
Because eventually there's going to be a pit stop, and then that's when you're going to get to take it over. So why ruin your tires?
There's just zero chance that their race pace is going to hold up for like 50, 60 laps. But in a sprint, there's no disincentive for teams that are overachieving to show any mercy, show any pragmatism, Because like every driver thinks, I can probably hold someone off for 10 laps. And I think this is like maybe the sprint format is kind of working because suddenly we are seeing fights that are way more like to the death out there
Right.
than you ever see in a race. Because in a race, you know, across the entire, 2 hours of it, people are going to kind of rise and fall to the level, things finding their level, basically. That's what happens in a race a lot of times. In the sprint, there is no such, fatalism about how this is going to play out. And I think that kind of has helped the sprints be interesting. But I don't know how much of that was also me reacting to the fact that, Kevin Magnussen might be the hero we need right now.
He's the hero Nico Hülkenberg needs anyway, because Hamilton did eventually get past both K-Mag and Yuki Tsunoda, but he never was able to make up that 6-second gap, I believe it was, between himself and Nico.
He got penalized for pit lane speeding, right?
Oh, Hamilton did, right?
Yeah.
So he ended up actually getting kicked back down the order. You're right, yeah. Not as many penalties as Kevin Magnussen, though. The results...
Well, so...
Sorry, go on.
Did you catch the funny bit about Magnussen in between the sessions?
After the sprint?
Yeah.
No. What happened?
So he got all these penalty points. And I guess he's doing an interview with... Sky or something, one of the Sky people. Like, might be Natalie Pinkham. But he basically says, oh, yeah, I was doing it to help Hülkenberg. And the stewards re-summoned him. They just talked to him about, driving standards and all that. But the thing that, they hadn't, it was kind of obvious to us what's going on, but he hadn't actually just straight up said, yep, I was doing whatever it takes to protect my teammates' points position. And so they re-summoned him.
What are they going to do?
Discuss further what was going on.
Add more time to his sprint race?
I think it's one of those things where you just can't. Everyone knows what's going on, but you just can't say it.
Oh,
you can't say out loud.
You said the quiet part loud.
Yeah, it's one thing if it's hard racing and wow,
That's very funny.
He got really hot under the collar during that race, but then to turn around and be like, nope, I was doing exactly what I was told. That raises different questions. I think if you're Haas, it's you're gonna blow this for us, man.
I guess they don't want a constructor. I mean, they had the black and white flag waved, right? So that's up there. I do feel also that I would have loved for him to come on the radio and shouted diplomatic immunity or something like that, because you could really just tell he just didn't give a shit. I swear to God, I watched the highlights again. That
I thought
night.
The highlights of Lethal Weapon 2.
I should do. I'm on that old movie kick at the moment. Is there cars in that? Can we do that for a Patreon podcast? That'd be pretty good. But I watched it again afterwards, and it was just so funny. It was just everything about it was really funny. I thought it did really though shine a light on just how bad the Mercedes is, and we'll get into it again. But it's just that car. People keep talking about Lewis Hamilton's crystal ball this past weekend, where he knows when to jump. Who knows if he's jumping to the right place? But he clearly there's bad mojo at Mercedes, and they seem to be walking backwards at this stage. The race ends. Let's go through the grid. The sprint, not the Grand Prix. Obviously, Lance Stroll and Lando Norris did not finish the race. Kevin Magnussen in 18th position with all those beautiful time penalties. He finished 200 hours behind everyone else now. Fernando Alonso in 17th, never really recovered from that first lap incident. Lewis Hamilton joins them at the back in 16th with his penalty point for, was it speeding in the pit lane?
Yeah.
He got? That's a shame. Why was he in the pit lane?
I think this was a pre-race session, right? I think he was when he was before,
when he was going out to do his
maybe during the warm-up or something, I don't know, but they tagged him for it.
That's impressive. That's going to be a pub quiz question in 10 years. Who's the only driver who managed to get a speeding in the pit lane penalty during a sprint race where no one pits? Esteban Ocon in 15th, Valtteri Bottas in 14th, Alexander Albon in 13th, George Russell in the other Mercedes in 12th, Zhou Guanyu in 13th, Logan Sargent in 10th. Unfortunately, he doesn't get a point because it's a sprint. Pierre Gasly in 9th. Yuki Tsunoda claims that 8th spot. Nico Hülkenberg brings home 2 points for the Haas boys. They'll split them, I'm sure, at the dining table. 7th position for him. Oscar Piastri, decent drive there in 6th position. Carlos Sainz in 5th. Danny Ricciardo did hold on. He did get overtaken by Sergio Perez, as Rob said, pretty quick. I think it was like lap 5 or something. But he managed to hold off the Ferraris and get what are we calling them again? What's ORCARB? VCARB? Is that what people call it? VCARB?
VCARB,
5 points. Sergio Perez gets 6th. He's got 3 in 3rd. Charles Leclerc in 2nd gets 7 points, and Max Verstappen brings home the 8 points in 1st place. There is no extra points on offer for fastest lap in the sprint. There should be one for best defending. You know who? That's who Alonso wants as his teammate. Defend like a lion. He needs that. K-Mag is the guy. Maybe that's what he's trying to do.
And we know Alonso's no stranger to having worked with guys who go outside the rules.
100%. Yeah. Defend, crash your car, do whatever you need. This will not be the only time Crashgate is brought up today. Can you imagine what the next time is going to be?
Wait, now I'm actually...
A scenario where somebody wants a safety car and a scenario where somebody does not want a safety car.
Very true.
Yes. So onward we go. It's Saturday. Sprint's over, but we've got qualifying tonight. The day keeps going. I'm with you. I like this format. Anything about qualifying stand out to you, or should we just get ourselves to the grid?
I just have one note from qualifying, which is this might be where I started to I'm getting radicalized against the drivers complaining and demanding penalties, at the drop of a dime. But Q1, Leclerc says something like, the Williams, they know exactly what they do. They're very far ahead, but they know what they are doing. And it cuts to an in-car, and there's a Williams, a speck in the distance. And Leclerc is convinced that they are intentionally ruining his air by being on the track. It was bizarre. It was the most paranoid. It was the most paranoid message I've heard from Leclerc.
Does he think James Vowes is a sleeper agent for Mercedes or something?
I don't. It was, but also the implication that it keeps happening, that they keep doing this.
Yeah, you'll never guess, guys. It's happening again. Look at Logan Sargent. Look at what he's doing.
I think the whole, again, the aerodynamic sensitivity of these cars, the fact there's never enough track space for anyone to get a clean run, I think it is causing them all to slowly lose their minds.
Well, we sort of skimmed over it a bit during sprint qualifying, but there was a lot of cars out of position, and a large part of it was because, and it happened again during this qualifying, that all the drivers were saying the track was different every single time they went around it. The grip levels were just constantly shifting. It was really difficult to plan like a proper hot lap. Obviously, the sprint racing sort of changes that up a little bit. We saw that in China too, but the rain was the sort of thing that made them keep going lap after lap after lap. But one part of this is a complete inversion of the VCARB situation, which we saw in sprint qualifying. The grid looked like this. Let me go make sure I'm going to the grid, not qualifying. I'm not sure if there was any changes. Was there? Oh, I've got Danny Ricciardo at the back for the race. Do you remember what happened there? Did he do something?
I think he did pick up a penalty.
Sorry, folks. We're not I'm not a Drew Scanlon. Let's just go through the qualifying as it was then. Zhou Guanyu in 20th, K-Mag in 19th, Danny Ricciardo in 18th, Logan Sargent 17th, Valtteri Bottas 16th, Fernando Alonso 15th, Alexander Albon in 14th, and Esteban Ocon in 13th, Pierre Gasly in 12th, Lance Stroll 11th, decent qualifying over his teammate there, Yuki Tsunoda in 10th, up on his teammate by 8 places. Nico Hülkenberg in 9th. He's not French. Why did I say it like that? Lewis Hamilton in 8th. George Russell in 7th. A little bit better for the Mercedes this time around. Oscar Piastri in 6th. Lando Norris in 5th. The two McLarens beside each other, almost 2 by 2, except Sergio Perez couldn't stick it. He's in 4th. Carlos Sainz is 3rd. Charles Leclerc 2nd, and Max Verstappen in 1st. And if I take a cursory glance at the other one, the only difference I see here is Danny Ricciardo's at the back, so presumably he did something. He got a penalty.
Oh, wait.
Changed the gearbox or did something. I don't know what he did.
No. Oh, that's right. We forgot.
What did we forget?
It's the carryover from China.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yes.
That's what it was.
Okay.
I'd completely forgotten. Okay.
I didn't remember anything happening to him. There you go. There you go. Now it makes sense. Do you think Kevin Magnussen will have a carryover? He kind of should, maybe. For the next sprint race, maybe, you know? Maybe it's like a sprint infraction. So it only...
Magnussen is exploring the outer limits of what they can do to drivers to make them stop doing this shit. I'm excited.
Maritime law, as you said. It's international waters. And it is. Have you seen that fake dock they have in the middle of Miami? I'm a big fan that they're doing that. They're committing to it. They're not. It wasn't just...
Believe me, I am sure a lot of people attending the high roller parts of the Miami GP are very familiar with legal exemptions and zones of permission around the world.
Absolutely, especially in the state of Florida. I think that's probably where a lot of them are getting cozy with the local administrators. All right, let's start with the first lap of this race. Sergio Perez must have seen Lewis Hamilton and his strategy at the start of that race, which took out 2 cars and almost took out 2 more cars. Think about all the drivers' championships that would have been taken out in that. I mean, mostly it would have been Alonso and Hamilton. He looked at that.
I was thinking that when you laid out the cars that were in it, I was like, and 9 world championships between them.
Exactly. Think about how many future world championships there could be in there. He said that was really cool. I'm going to do that. And I guess maybe he stopped the highlights before the crash happened, because Sergio fucking Perez almost makes every non-F1, non-Red Bull fan, F1 fan's dream come true as he torpedoes down the inside, narrowly missing the back of his teammate's car, and thankfully to the 2 Ferraris who are 2nd and 3rd and basically fighting for position into that turn. Fair play to the 2 of them for also seeing this fucking kamikaze pilot coming down the inside, because they also kind of like balk at it as well and go, "Oh Jesus!" I'm getting it.
I keep thinking about what would have happened if he just hammered into the back of Max's car. Like, what does Red Bull do? Like, is it just like, well, Danny, you're in. I don't give a shit. Like how bad, how spotty the performance is. We're done. It is the most fortunate thing in the world.
Oh my god,
that he didn't actually hit Max, because that would have opened up a can of worms. Like, I don't think they're ready to replace him. I don't know who the clear cut, like, better than Sergio in that car is that they have access to.
Right.
But it would have been one of those moments where it's like, this is not. Can you imagine Max on the radio?
So I don't want to.
He can't take a bad pit stop without losing his shit.
I don't want to spoil this race, but did you see Verstappen reacting to that replay after the race?
That look is worth a million words. It is beautiful. It is fantastic, but also, like, again, I can only imagine what the look on his face would have been getting out of the car after he'd gotten taken out by his teammate. But, you know, I also have to give it to Sergio. Jeez. Like, the great man said, you know, once you no longer go for a gap, you are no longer a racing driver. And in honor of the 30th anniversary of Ayrton's death, Sergio, showing his spirit, is still alive and well. Yeah. Following in his footsteps, following in Hamilton's. Genuinely, though, like, from his onboard, from Perez, Leclerc is so slow getting off the line. Like, I'm actually surprised he had enough acceleration to keep Sergio behind him, probably because Sergio is on that shitty part of the track where the grip is bad, so he's probably losing a bit of the grip he would need to accelerate. But, like, Leclerc's fully bogged. Like, shit, man, it would have been very hard not to go for it because it feels like he's a sitting duck. The guy who gets really screwed in all this is Sainz was set up for a beautiful start.
Yes,
to the race.
he was. Yeah.
And he ends up having a shitty race. And I think it all basically comes down to this minute because he sees Perez flying in. He has to abort his overtake of Leclerc. Leclerc zips ahead. And then in all that, the biggest winner is Oscar Piastri.
Yeah.
Just goes flying. Like through that corner, has a better exit than the Ferraris, zips ahead,
Flies
straight
it,
into
Yeah, and he's up into third position, which is I mean, Piastri's had a good weekend up until now. Norris is in sixth at this stage. Perez slides in behind Carlos Sainz and manages to keep that. Of course, Norris is didn't. Even
we should brought up they have upgrades this weekend.
They do as well. Yes, exactly. We didn't get
Norris has got the full kit, and then Piastri was on like half their upgrades.
And it had sort of fallen out of the news in a way because Norris hadn't basically not been in the sprint race, so we kind of didn't see that. Piastri had a good race though, so there's sort of. But at that stage, you're sort of thinking, oh, okay, well, it's going to be a little while. We've got Sainz and Perez behind him. There's probably going to be, maybe it'll be a matter of time. But Piastri, to his credit, the car's got a bit of pace, and he does a good job defending for as long as he can. Rob Zachney, I'm going to go back to you with your beautiful, I can only imagine, notepad full of notes, detailed notes.
Oh, you mean my digital notepad?
Oh, wonderful! We're in the digital age now. Good stuff.
Yeah, this has actually been one of the better use cases for it because it's like infinite pages. Yeah. So once Piastri gets past Leclerc, you start seeing signs just letting the Ferrari pit know that he's pretty sure he's faster than Leclerc. Hamilton early in the race did get overtaken again by he got overtaken by Nico Hülkenberg, and I was like, oh my god, it's happening again. But he did manage to get past the Haas for P7. But then I gather that I think he might have had to give the position back.
Right.
I think you're due to like it being an illegal overtake. But yeah, so like
I wasn't expecting Mercedes's 2024 nemesis to be Haas, but I'm kind of enjoying this.
Yeah, it's a very no, sorry, he locked up shortly after the overtake. He locked up and let Hülkenberg back through. So yeah, it is turning out to be that he just can't, like he's magnetized for the Haas's and getting into trouble with them. But yeah, so beyond that, it turns into a pretty normal pit strategy race. So far, we get the first cycle of pit stops. But in all of this, for a minute there, it looks like Piastri is really situated to make a surprise challenge, maybe for a podium. But also in the background of this is Norris continues to set better and better times.
Yeah, fastest laps
throughout the race. So the first sign that there's a bit of alarm, I think in the Red Bull pit, is that they tell Max on lap 15 that he needs to step it up, that he needs to start putting on some pace and opening up some gap.
The way he put it after the race was that, and I think this is very sort of demonstrative of the season that they've had up until this point, was he said, we had the pace to be in front, but whenever the sort of pace, the afterburners that he has that allows him to create that gap and manage that gap, he said they just didn't have it. It just wasn't there this weekend at all.
Yeah, and he'd been complaining throughout the weekend, grip being really bad. Again, I think as you mentioned, everyone was struggling with evolution and the way tires would wear on this track. The other thing is that, and this might have worked against him a bit, Piastri kind of rejected the notion of an early pit.
Yeah.
that he wanted to stay out as long as possible because he was really afraid of coming up behind the Mercedes. He did not feel they could overtake them, which the commentators sort of remarked on, like, have you seen the Mercedes lately? I think you got them, right? But either way, it was sort of one of the points of concern for him. But Verstappen's race maybe starts to go, thoroughly off the rails here, starting with lap 21. He hits the little bollard.
He does.
In that chicane.
And carries it for a little while.
Yeah, it almost ends up in his lap. I was watching the Jolyon Palmer video before we recorded this, and apparently, because there's a theory that he picks up damage from this contact, and I couldn't see how, because the bollard's, it's a lightweight, like, it's not a hard thing. It didn't mess up his front wing, so I couldn't imagine how it would have damaged him. But apparently, like, the thing that Palmer picks up when he watched the replay is, it's not just that he hits the bollard. He gets the car a little bit airborne over the curb of the chicane, and how the bollard has that little ring mount at the base of it.
Yes, yeah. It's a bit wider at the bottom. Yeah.
The end of the car's floor came right down on it.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And so the theory is it might have actually, like, fractured some of the floor.
Yeah.
In that contact, just from being dropped on. In terms of, like, the physics of that impact, it'd be like a spike. So the theory is that, like, his pace might have been a little compromised from this, but the data don't fully show that. So it is hard to say. It brings out a virtual safety car, which doesn't, it seems like that might play into the McLaren's hands, but it doesn't.
They don't balk.
The VSC is it's short. People are in the wrong position, and so we get a lot of pit stops under the VSC. Ocon, Hamilton, Magnussen, Verstappen, grabs one in there. But, like, you're back at race pace very, very quickly, because a nimble course worker races out on that tarmac, grabs the pieces of bollard, and darts back to the fence.
Yeah, Piastri ends up leading the race then for a couple of laps while they're all getting shuffled. The McLarens do then decide to pull him in for his pit on lap 28th, which then puts Norris in first with a need to pit. Verstappen is behind him, who's already pitted. And then later that lap, we see a shot of initially a Haas backing up from a wall, and then we see the other car sitting there. What did you make of this incident, Rob?
At the time, I was like, this is K-Mag being K-Mag, right? This is him basically, like, tagging another car, sort of in the mid rear, and dumping him around, forcing the issue in a corner where, he shouldn't really be forcing it. Watching the replays, it's one of those things where I think I don't think there's anything Sargent could have or should have done differently. If you look at his in-car view, he clearly has the line. There's no reason he should expect Hülkenberg to force his way up what was a pretty small, like, he would have had to go right over the curb.
Right.
So I'm not sure, like, I would put much on Sargent here. The question is, was Nico, racing fairly in trying to go for it? And he kind of was.
Yeah.
And the other thing is this, if we only have people trying overtakes where they're going to be clean and unequivocal, F1's not very good. If that, you know what I mean? Like, that, it's kind of these dicey moves that are, like, the most memorable and, like, the coolest ones in racing. And now it feels like we're in a cycle where we sort of adjudicate them and legislate around them every single time they happen.
Yeah, best overtake of this race was probably Hamilton later on, I think, when, great little, in a part of the track no one was expecting, right? That's what we enjoy about it. To me, this one really looks like one person thought they were racing and the other person didn't realize the other person was racing. Like, to me, it's like Sargent doesn't even know he's there, and he's driving his car and he's focusing and he turns in where he's supposed to turn in, and unfortunately there's a Haas right there, and Hülkenberg is trying to, get up the inside and force him out a little bit, and that door was never open. The invitation was never there. Yeah. It's one of those ones where I think if Sargent has a bit more experience, maybe he doesn't crash, but also, I don't know, maybe not.
Well, it's one of those things where probably I think the takeaway from this, if you're Sargent, is that you need to remember who you're racing alongside. Most drivers probably aren't going to force that. Magnussen will. Like, he just that is who he is. And to an extent, like, if Sargent had left a little bit of racing room, we would have had a hell of an exit to that corner. It would have been an awesome overtake, or at least a battle side by side to the next corner. It would have been cool. So I'm kind of with you where it, looking at it from Magnussen's position, like, he was better positioned coming around that first corner than I thought. The first time I saw it, it looks like he just sort of drives into to Logan. Next time around, it looks like there is an angle he can take, but Logan just doesn't give it. And maybe could have, but I also think Logan. It was perfectly fair to think, I fended off this attempt on the entry to the chicane. It's over now,
right? And
with Magnussen, like Rambo at the end of First Blood, nothing is over. He will continue fighting.
He'll continue fighting and continue fighting his penalties. He did get a 10-second time penalty for the incident, and then he failed to serve it, so he got a penalty for failing to serve his 10-second time penalty later on. Yeah, K-Mag just reaching for that most penalties in a race. I think was it Crofty or somebody was saying that he's gotten more different types of penalties than anyone in a race, something like that. I
mean, you mentioned like pub trivia, and I think this whole race weekend is going to be a pub trivia. Who has achieved the most penalties for most diverse set of infractions in a race weekend? Probably K-Mag off this weekend.
It's remarkable.
It's truly like a gentleman driver level performance in some ways, just continually running afoul of the stewards. But it does feel like at a certain point they just had enough of his shit and were not giving him the benefit of the doubt with anything. I just can't get over, though, Piastri and Sainz, lap 28, that pit stop. Like, your whole weekend is different if you just give it one more lap. And who did give it one more lap was Norris, and he was aided in this. Actually, gave it 2 more laps because he didn't take the opportunity immediately. But that didn't matter because the safety car missed him. This was another weird thing that happens in all this. The safety car comes out, and you get the circuit map. Norris is, like a third, an entire sector ahead of the safety car. Everyone else is piled up behind the safety car. I feel like I haven't seen this very often, where like you just have the safety car leading everyone but the leader.
Yeah.
For like a lap, while he, just drives on ahead, takes a pit stop, and then comes out. And I guess because once the safety car is out, this all also be done. It has to be done in this like controlled fashion, but it's weird how they end up doing it. The safety car ends up releasing the whole field to go catch up Norris, and then it will drop back and let Norris catch up the safety car.
Wild.
And to me, it also just seemed like, but isn't the whole point of this to make sure that like the cars are all bunched up and like the course workers know where everyone is?
Through the part of the track.
Yeah, now you're waving everyone through. It was just bizarre. It was a weird little moment.
So yeah, I wondered, because it did seem like he had maybe missed it the first time around, but that he might still have gotten the gap. But by the time this all happened, it was pretty much settled that no one was going to capture him because he was on the wrong side of the safety car. So Norris is basically race leader at this stage, in a car which seems to be doing all right on a weekend where Verstappen has been struggling in his Red Bull and now might have a bit of damage, although I don't think we really knew that during the race. But it's still like, Are yawning here. Yawning at the most exciting part of the race. There's still a good 20 laps to go here by the time they start back in. 23 laps. So on lap 34, the safety car comes in. Norris does a great job. I feel like Verstappen just treats safety car releases differently, doesn't he? He's always beside them. It's the same thing he did with the last race in Abu Dhabi in 2020 and a similar thing here where he's just like, he doesn't wait behind the car, he sits up beside him. Norris, to his credit, he goes a little bit earlier maybe than he wants to, maybe trying to catch out Max a little bit there as well. As the window of opportunity closes, it gives Verstappen a better idea of when he might go, but he does a good job. He gets out ahead of him, and in the next couple of laps it's mostly a battle between Sainz and Piastri, and Norris is actually doing a good job of immediately getting out of DRS range of Max Verstappen, and suddenly you're like, oh.
Well, I think with a little help from Leclerc, like as Norris
right.
and Max were fighting a little bit, Leclerc started to get, I don't think it ever escalated to him like making like serious attempts on Max, but he was all over his mirrors, right? And so I do think Max had to start splitting focus between running down Norris, which was already going to be hard because Norris's tires were, I think, like 5 laps younger. But, now having to do that plus make sure that there was no window open for Leclerc, I think it sort of determined that Max was not going to have that window of opportunity, which was going to be basically the only window for the rest of the race.
Right.
Just because how the tire thing is shaken out with the safety car.
Sainz does get past Piastri, and then Piastri is fighting with Perez pretty quickly after that, and probably an incident that'll be played back a couple of times in the McLaren post-race debrief was the incident on lap 40 where on the first DRS zone, Sergio Perez manages to get past Piastri. Piastri's gone up the inside of the turn, and Hamilton, the wily fox, basically gets a toe behind Perez and swings it around the outside. Much to Piastri's chagrin, he gets overtaken by 2 cars in one corner.
Yeah, hang on though. You can't I think we got to go back to the Sainz Piastri fight a little bit, because it's too funny.
Yeah.
Because this turns into that is also a really no holds barred fight that those two guys end up having, and Piastri sends Sainz out really wide in the chicane, and Sainz is immediately like, he ran me off the road, and then starts sending a series of increasingly funny radio messages. He needs to get the position back. Just tell him. Tell him to give the position back.
Tell the McLaren engineers that they need. They'll give him a penalty unless just give it back now.
It was so funny because he was so clearly just enraged by the incident, and just cannot believe that Piastri won't do the gentlemanly thing and return the position he shouldn't have. And then when the stewards come through with no action,
Piastri. I don't think Piastri's car left the track, so there was nothing.
No, but he did run him off. It's one of those things where he did not leave much racing room, and this goes back to I don't fully understand how we're supposed to adjudicate these things, because it's also very clear these cars turn like shit. So, what's running, I have a really hard time distinguishing between someone running another driver off versus, unless you perform, unless you really cut your pace and go to lock that steering, you're not going to be able to provide more room. It's you're kind of asking drivers, are you going to concede the position by leaving room, which is going to force you to slow way the hell down, or are you just going to take the only viable racing line? And because these cars just sort of wallow through corners, that means they're going to eat up all the space. I don't know. To me, I don't know if Piastri can really leave that much more room in that chicane without basically saying yeah, go ahead, Carlos.
Yeah.
I concede.
What?
So it's kind of a goofy moment.
What did you make of Carlos Sainz eventually overtaking him and basically parking his car so that Piastri had to stop?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty rich after. So here's the thing: if they had penalized Piastri, I would have said, well, they should penalize Carlos. But but they didn't penalize Piastri.
Yeah.
And then Carlos, from one camera angle, it looks like he just dive bombs and then gets it wrong and causes a collision with Piastri, which destroys Piastri's race.
Right.
And from that camera angle, the one at the end of the straight, I thought, like, man, like, Carlos, this sucks. This is really poor, poor racing. It's really unfair to Piastri. From a different angle, it's a much more controlled move than it looks. It's just that, like, Carlos has an awkward moment at the apex, and then Piastri, like, is turning as well, and they just make contact. So it was like one of those things where I think it was an aggressive move, but it's so hard to overtake in these cars and on this track that you kind of only have aggressive moves left.
Yeah.
And then Sainz collects a penalty for it.
And thanks for reminding me, of course, that Piastri had a bit of damage there, which does go some way to explaining the doubled overtake that happened later on that lap. Piastri did eventually come in. Actually, I shouldn't say eventually. Pretty quickly, they called him in, said, "You're going to have to change your front wing. It's pretty bad." Which, when you're 16 laps from the end of the race is the last thing you want to hear. He's got to get a fresh set of tires, but it's not like that's going to help him too much on the streets of crypto.com here. The rest of the race to me was mostly biting my nails, because here we have Lando Norris on the hards that seem to be working for him. Verstappen behind him, now about 5 or 6 seconds on the hards, which seem to be the worst tire for the Red Bulls all weekend. And the last time this happened was in Sochi when that rain came in, and I still remember being just crestfallen when they didn't make the call for him to swap tires, and he was just spinning around like a little ballerina aquaplaning.
Memory serves, he made that call. Now,
whether
he should have been allowed to make that call is another question, right? Like, I think at a certain point, you're the guy with the radar. It's like, kid, just come in. But I do seem to recall him getting on the radio and be like, "Don't bring me in."
Right.
He was so close he could taste it, and that bit of desperation cost him. But obviously, when the gods are decreeing that Nikita Mazepin is going to go on the greatest tear of his F1 career. What can one do?
Hey, look, he knew, right? He smelt the clouds. Do you remember? Remember, he was like, I know those clouds.
He was going to get from like P20 to like P17 or something. But anyway, the part that really cracked me up was, so Piastri, hot under the collar, everything's gone wrong. He's got some pace now. He starts dicing it up with Danny Rick. And they're like really going at it. And then McLaren get on the radio and they're just like, knock that shit off.
We do not.
Hey, remember Lando is leading, and the last thing we want to do is bring out a safety car. That is the end of Piastri doing any racing.
This happened, I think it was like, he did eventually get past Ricciardo, but he what I found funny about it as well was, like, first of all, there's the whole Crashgate thing of like, okay, we don't want a safety car here because this is obviously going to bunch him up. Verstappen's like 7 seconds behind Norris by the time this happens. The other thing is there was about 4 laps left, and all I could think of was, no, Michael, no, when a safety car comes out and you're giving Max Verstappen, I don't care what tires he's on, Max Verstappen with 1 lap to go is going to send it. But there was a part of me that was also thinking, this is a good time for this to be happening. If it didn't come down to it, but if it came down to a last lap shoot off between Norris and Verstappen, I don't think Verstappen's going to let anyone win, but I think if there was anyone that he was going to not totally, selfishly go for, it would be Norris, especially considering the fact that Verstappen's basically picking up wins like it's nothing at the moment. And Norris, this is his 110th start this race. He's had 16 podiums, but he's never won a race. It didn't come to that in the end, but in my head I was thinking, Max will be happy to see Lando win a race as well. They're all competitors. What were you thinking in the last couple of laps of this one?
Yeah, no, I was keen to see Norris get that get that monkey off his back, where it's just wins are so hard to come by. It's like this weird feast and famine situation where there's a handful of drivers who win all the time. You know, they say it never stops being special, but obviously, of course it does. It can't mean the same thing. And then everyone else in the same era is like just win starved, right?
Right.
And so I was pleased to see him finally get it. I thought the McLaren celebrations were great. Him sort of vaulting into the crowd McLaren mechanics.
That was the bit. That was the bit that got
crowd
me.
surf. That was awesome.
Yeah. So he crosses the line, he keeps it together, he pulls up. There is basically the camera doesn't leave him for this whole section, and there is just a sort of end of season 12 grand finale, one after the other. All the drivers come up and give him hugs. Like, obviously Verstappen and Leclerc, Verstappen and Leclerc are right there. Fernando Alonso, who used to be, I guess, his mentor at McLaren a long time ago, comes out, gives him a hug. Danny Ricciardo comes out and gives him a hug. The one time I started to tear up a little bit when he jumped on his team, because you could really see then, like, he was just, they were all absolutely elated. George Russell came out, like there wasn't anyone there, it seemed like, who wasn't happy to see Lando get a race win.
It was so exciting. Fred Vasseur crashed the celebrations. And the photos of him, like, fully joining in were very funny.
Yeah. He was, like, completely a man I've seen not smiling a lot. It was nice to see him completely sort of cutting loose, and ultimately also going up to be the constructor, the designated person for the constructor as well, for the engine win. Lando Norris brings it in. Great little bit of green room banter where they watch Sergio Perez attempt to final destination, the Red Bull's race weekend, and some more interesting bits and bobs there. And I think a lot of people excited for the win. It was probably something F1 needed a little bit, considering the season we're in. It was a kind of I felt like it was something we got as a gift for putting up with some of the season so far. Although, should we just do sprints every weekend? Because these past 2 weekends have definitely exceeded expectations.
I mean, look, if F1 can get away with it, they would do it every week, right? I don't believe for a second it's like, well, we have to choose the right places for sprints, etc. I don't think they believe that at all. It's like football. If they could get rid of the preseason and have like 20 weeks of regular season games, they would do it in a heartbeat.
Robotic cruciate ligaments and on all those players, they do it. Robot shoulders.
Exactly. So I think my feeling is if it becomes clear they've hit on something with this format and it's drawing crowds and producing a lot of like good racing action across a weekend, more than the old model, I think they will expand it. Probably to the point where we wish they would not, because it is certainly, again, a lot more racing to watch. And it's part of that. We see it in games, right? It's everything. Everyone is competing now for like more of their audience's time. And if you leave anything on the table, if you any weekend where people are not watching F1 from Liberty Media's position, that is a weekend where they could be watching F1 though. What if we found a way to make it happen?
We have no F1 this weekend though. But before we talk about what's next and get to a much needed ad break, an hour and 15 minutes into this podcast, let's have a look at the driver standings. First of all, for this race, the Crypto.com Miami Grand Prix ends with Logan Sargent unfortunately not making it around. Kevin Magnussen in 19th, Alexander Albon in 18th, Lance Stroll 17th, Valtteri Bottas in 16th, Danny Ricciardo in 15th after a disappointing race after a great sprint. Zhou Guanyu in 14th, Oscar Piastri in 13th. He managed to get past a bunch of them, but not up into the point, sadly. Pierre Gasly, who we never talk about because he drives an Alpine, in 12th. Nico Hülkenberg in 11th. Esteban Ocon, similarly, but at least he got a point in 10th. Fernando Alonso in 9th. George Russell 8th. Seems like the Mercedes had a better run today or during the race. Yuki Tsunoda in 7th. Talk about a tale of 2 days, or a weekend of 2 days. I don't know, a tale of 2 coins, whatever it is. Yuki Tsunoda bringing home the points in the one that mattered after Danny Rick obviously had a great Saturday. Lewis Hamilton in 6th. Carlos Sainz in 5th, Sergio Perez in 4th, Charles Leclerc in 3rd, Max Verstappen in 2nd position, and Lando Norris in 1st position in the McLaren Mercedes. What does that do to the beautiful driver standings? Let's take a little gander, shall we? Logan Sargent still... Oh, no, we go from the top here, don't we? Max Verstappen's in the lead with 136 points. Sergio Perez in 2nd with 103. Charles Leclerc still in 3rd with 98. Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz, though, now tied for 4th position with 83 points. Oscar Piastri in 6th with 41. George Russell in 7th with 37. Fernando Alonso in 8th with 33. Lewis Hamilton in 9th position with 27 points. Yuki Tsunoda's in 10th with 14. Then we have Lance Stroll in 11th with 9. Ollie Berman and Nico Hülkenberg now tied up for 12th position with 6 points. Danny Ricciardo is in 14th with 5 points. Esteban Ocon and Kevin Magnussen joined 15th with 1. And Alexander Albon, Zhou Guanyu, Pierre Gasly, Valtteri Bottas, and Logan Sargent with the goose egg. The teams look like this. Red Bull Racing with 239 points. Ferrari with 187. McLaren Mercedes now in a fairly happy 3rd, 124 points. Mercedes in 4th with 64. Almost less than half of them. Aston Martin in 5th with 42. Kind of not hot on their heels, but, in the region. VCarb, Orbi Honda, RBPT, whatever it is, are in 6th position with 19th. Haas are in 7th with 7. Alpine are in 8th with 1. And Williams and Kick Sauber, Ferrari are yet to score. We will be back in just a second after these incredibly important messages. All right, Rob. It's been a lot to talk about this week already, but I believe there is also the important news. Are we talking about Trump first or something else?
Yeah, let's just talk about we had the good vibes in the McLaren win. Lando won his first race. Woo!
Woo! Look, man.
And then
it's an orange car, right? They gotta. It's all about brand synergy, right? Who else?
You got to get their mascot.
Carrot Top wasn't available. So who else? Who's left? Who's left after Carrot Top? You got to go. That guy who's the apprentice. Perfect.
It was so it basically shortly after the race, people start sharing pictures around of Trump posing pictures in the McLaren garage, chatting up Zach Brown, chatting with Lando Norris. It's not good. And McLaren's position is, they said McLaren is a non-political organization. However, we recognize and respect the office of the President of the United States. So when the request was made to visit our garage on race day, we accepted it alongside the President of the FIA and the CEOs of Liberty Media and Formula One. So that would hold up if Trump were a normal ex-president. And this is the weird territory we find ourselves in. This guy's running for president again. Very good chance he's going to be president again.
If he's not in Rikers Island by the end of the week.
Yeah, given that he should have been now, probably several times over because he keeps trying to sabotage his own trial. But, yeah, I think for me, one of the things that they handled really poorly here is I feel bad that Lando's win gets associated with 100%, this. You've got in true Trumpian fashion, he sort of jokes that maybe I'm your good luck charm.
Yeah, he was the Midas touch they needed to get Lando his first win.
If there's one thing that we know from Trump's history, it's that anything he touches succeeds. Anything that he's involved in, things tend to go real well after that. But yeah, it's I think if I were I think if I were like Lando or one of Lando's people, I'd be kind of annoyed that I was put in that position, especially at the occasion of my first race win. I would not be happy that you're sort of put in a position to have to respond to and engage with a character that's this divisive. Especially, F1, as we've seen, likes to avoid courting controversy if it can.
Oh, it loves being apolitical.
Well, and that's the other part, is that everyone is like, let's have no doubts. The F1 grid is probably loaded to the brim with people who like the Tories and like Donald Trump, right? Like that is the world that F1 operates in. And so I just don't think you're going to see from F1 anywhere near the outrage or the regarding of Donald Trump as a dangerous and like fundamentally like hostile figure. You're just not going to get that from F1. And the other part of this is there's kind of naked self-interest where you're presuming, and again, in a lot of the cases, probably hoping that this guy's president again, and his, all the regulatory bodies that could cause you trouble are once again overseen by him, etc. So it's not a terribly surprising move that you would have like Trump welcomed to an F1 garage, in Miami, but I do think probably McLaren should have responded to this as this guy's more radioactive than your typical ex-president.
I was interested in like were they the first garage that asked, or did everyone else? Did Red Bull say no? Did Mercedes say no? Who knows? Maybe Ron DeSantis went to Red Bull. That would explain why Verstappen's car was so shit this weekend. I guess the thing that like sort of stands out to me about this is that like whenever any celebrity goes to the pit, like that is a marketing move. And this is this is bad optics. You know what I mean? Like, sure, there are F1 fans who are Trump supporters, I'm sure. But, like, in terms of is this a net win or loss? Like, having him around is assuredly a net loss. So, like, why would you offer yourself into that situation? So, anyway.
Yeah.
Shame.
I mean, like, on top of, the other stuff, this is a guy who, lost a massive civil judgment for sexual assault.
Yes, yeah. Which F1 has, at least at Red Bull, we have decided that that's okay, that's fair game. Hey, look,
but that's probably further reason why you should be way the hell more careful about having guys around. Yeah, because it's like,
and Nikita Mazepin, he could, that's not that long in the memory. Although that ultimately wasn't what got him out of the sport.
Yeah. But yeah, it is mostly it's just kind of a rancid coda to what was a pretty magical weekend for McLaren, and just kind of an example of people not realizing how badly something like this was going to come across, because this is not a typical political figure. He's not a local. You know what I mean. It's not like having. The sorts of people who come out to give away the first, second, third place trophies at all these events.
Yeah.
He's not one of those people. He's not a local bureaucrat. He's not some, political grande from the region. Much more divisive character. Much more, in many ways, loathsome one as well. Probably should have found a way to keep this guy at arm's length, even if you did decide to invite him to the pits. But instead, you kind of have one of those moments that are really revealing, which is, in the world of F1, they're sort of happy to make nice with this guy and give him a warm welcome.
What?
I do wonder how much of this is also Mohammed bin Salem.
Oh yeah, he was all over the weekend
as well.
He was out shaking hands with Lando and doing all that stuff, making his.
God, the way he materialized with Lando and draped his arm something about this guy gives me the worst.
I hate it. What it reminds me of, I'm not sure if you saw the last World Cup, but the fucking sycophants who run FIFA, the minute the winners are when Argentina won, and it was like, oh, they're Sepp Blatter and all these fucking crooks. They're all just all over him, like shaking his hands, hugging him. They even had like whatever it was, the emissary, I forget who it was, but like they put like a special thing on his head. It was just like the whole thing was like, it's not about you. Like you're a bureaucrat. You're not meant to be like front and center. And like FIFA is a
get out of
rancid
this moment
organization, but like that was what was happening in Miami. You could tell. It was like, I was like, would you fuck off? Like he was with him on the way to the green. It was just like, yeah. Although I did like the little cars.
I've never seen an FIA president insert himself into moments the way this guy does. And I think the other reason it's so discordant too is like previous FIA, like Jean Todt is like, you know, goes back in F1 a lot. It's less discordant when he pops up in a place because, like, that was his office for years and years and years. And even then, I don't remember his FIA presidency involving him being this public facing. This guy shows up every single time. And yeah, like butting into Lando's moment and, you know, giving him the like draping the arm around the shoulder, like
super
lost,
political,
dude.
Transparently political, and yeah.
Well, and then like the fact that he's tied up in like, you know, getting Trump this photo op in, you know, at this moment
while he's under investigation for, you know, influencing a race. like how?
Yeah. Well, I think the FIA cleared the FIA on that.
Oh, did they? Okay.
I can't remember, but yeah, it's well, a lousy moment. You know. Disappointing, not surprising. I think so. Also, maybe not. I don't know. It depends on disappointing. Definitely not surprising. So the the race promoter for the Miami GP basically had to go out and explain why a viral photo showing a $280 lobster roll at the Miami GP, why that was taken out of context.
I thought this was probably just a fake picture. It's not a fake picture, is it, Rob?
No, that is a real picture.
Okay.
So the picture, it is from Twitter user John High Jr. Posted, we skipped dinner at the F1 race tonight. And going to South Beach clubs. Picture of a menu at the Hard Rock, at one of the stands at the Hard Rock Stadium.
Hard Rock Bites, which to me implies sort of like cheap snack food. So
it certainly does.
Yeah. Who knows what their brick and mortar store at the GP was selling these lobster rolls for?
But yeah, like Maine lobster rolls, $280. Yellowfin tuna poke, $170. Let's see, a fruit refresher, $190. Add 1 ounce of caviar, $400.
Wow.
So
hey, look, let's not. That's the chilled food. Let's talk about the warmed food because that also is important. You can get an empanada duo. That's 2 empanadas, Rob. For actually, there's a fan covering that price, so I can't tell. But the steam buns are $120. The F1 platter, which has some sliders, ribeye quesadilla. It's $290, or you can just get some crispy wings if you just something light for $190. Or there's carne asada nachos, my personal favorite when I'm coming home drunk from a pub, and probably I've been drunk enough sometimes to pay $180 for them. So you know, I guess the market's there, so why not?
So I thought that was going to be the defense, which is like, listen, we're slinging hors d'oeuvres to the richest people you can imagine.
Fuck these rich people. Shit. Like they can pay $180 for nachos, right?
No, the catering staff's still making minimum wage.
Of course.
Don't get that twisted. But you know, we're just gonna gouge these folks. But I will say there's actually a defensible case here. This is a catering menu. This is not for I would like a lobster roll. He was like, these are suite prices.
Right.
For this race, for people who like bought private suites. He's a little iffy on the amounts. He's like, it was a lobster roll for like probably 10 people for $280.
That's wait.
In which case, isn't that 10 lobster rolls?
Oh,
really
I
hope
hear
they're
what you're
just serving
saying.
people.
Sorry. I thought you were saying this lobster roll, this one $280 lobster roll could feed 10 fucking people. To which I'm like, first of all, how big is this lobster roll? And also,
That's my question.
I'm not sharing a lobster roll with another human. I'm not putting my mouth near another where another person was eating a fucking lobster.
Are they
roll.
serving like corn on the cob, just like a giant, comically long like lobster roll that everyone just like takes a little nibble off?
It does say main lobster rolls. So,
okay.
So, and poke is probably the is what do you call it when it's why am I forgetting the word for? In my head, when I was thinking of what's the word when there's multiple of something, my brain went to sequel. What do you call it? What's the?
But again, that's
you gotta
a
help me with
question,
this word, man. I'm gonna lose my fucking mind. Sheeps. What do you call it when there's more than one of something?
A herd?
No,
Flock?
no. Just I'm being an idiot. My brain is broken, and I can't.
School.
And I can't think of the word for when there's multiple of something. I'm going to go crazy.
I can't. I don't.
Why
know,
can I
don't
not
know what it is,
remember? What's wrong?
Set?
Sorry, you keep. I feel like I'm having a
Either
stroke
way.
or something. Okay.
My question though is like again is I'm curious if there's like 10 Pokeballs that they're bringing up,
Right.
or is it like a trough of poke that you just spoon yourself out because I don't want that.
It's a feed bag full of.
See, poke feels great when it's made individually. It's like, what do you want in this? Here's your Pokeball. Great, feels awesome. If someone was just like, here's your
plural. The word is plural. Thank you.
Plural. Jesus
Fuck.
Christ! Wow,
What is wrong with my brain?
Yeah, I was going the wrong direction.
Yeah, that's my. Yeah, great. Public Irish.
But yeah, like trough of poke, I do not want that. Like if someone's like, here's a ladle, here's a bunch of like chilled fish, just dig in. Like, if I were a cat, that's the greatest fucking day of my life.
Yeah,
Miami GP is where it's at.
Imagine.
But
here's the thing. Here's the thing. That $180 carne asado nachos, that's coming like that.
Oh yeah, no, that's zero doubt. That is going to be like just. Everyone just here's some rubber gloves. Just reach in there and grab yourself some carne asada nachos. This is what being in the 1% is all about.
Exactly.
Everyone just grab a cheese glorp and just pull.
Amazing. Good stuff.
But yeah, so like, that is more defensible. It's still very silly. I think it does maybe reflect more, it's very clear as more people are getting a taste of what F1 is about, they're also getting more of a taste of who F1 is for.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
the stuff that I think you and I have always known, taken for granted. This is a plutocrat sport. Like this is, I don't know. I think to get more plutocratic, you probably have to be looking at like one of those sports that nobody but rich people watch, like polo or something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. That's the thing. At least a lot of the rich, a lot of wealthy people and big companies spend money on this thing, but it's what F1 is a especially in the UK is a fairly common middle class sport. I don't know, like I feel like it's relatively watched by everyone to a certain extent, but obviously
nothing about Miami is tailored toward middle class.
Nothing about any of these. That's why the classic races are so beloved. That's why people love Silverstone and Monza, and why they don't necessarily feel that way about. And obviously, like some of them are not. They're like in different parts of the world, which I also get. But it doesn't feel as organic.
Yeah, there's no equivalent at the Miami GP of like. And here's the camping area.
Yeah,
exactly. Where people, on the cheap, make a weekend of it. None of that's going on at Miami. Maybe there's a glamping area.
They probably kicked out a bunch of homeless people
camping.
actually to accommodate.
What?
They probably kicked out a bunch of homeless people to accommodate this. Probably the opposite.
Yeah. Well, you can't have people paying $280 for a lobster roll, and then seeing someone less fortunate than themselves in their eye line.
God forbid.
That just won't work.
All those lobster rolls, all the extra lobster rolls, doesn't matter how much they cost, they all went in the trash afterwards.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a bit of like, I think some of the reason F1 is like a little more defensive about this is there's a lot of people getting a load of F1 and realizing that, oh, this is not like other races you go to. This is not like going to a NASCAR race.
No.
This is, and people are, I think, used to like, wow, everything's so expensive at a stadium.
Right.
F1 is targeting a different sort of expensive.
I just bought my NASCAR tickets for Sonoma this year, and they were weekend passes. I think day tickets were, I can't even remember. Maybe they were 80 or something. My weekend pass, I think it was 130, but my kids' ticket was $10 for the weekend. Anyone under the age of 13. And I was like, that's pretty decent. That's not bad. Also, I've decided to camp this year. We're going to bring our little travel trailer thing. Going to lug it into
Hell yeah.
Sonoma Motor Speed. It's not quite like, doing the infield at Indy or something, but it's like it's literally 15 minutes. I live in Petaluma down the road. Like, it takes me 15 minutes to drive to Sears Point, as all the locals still call it, Sonoma Motor Speedway. And the camping for that, and maybe this will sound crazy to people who are listening, I'm not quite sure, but I live in fucking Northern California, where like, if you don't get one of the national park campsites, which are like basically free, you end up like spending a lot of money to go camping in lots of different spaces. I guess they're not free, but like they're somewhat depends which ones you go to. But if you're doing an RV somewhere, you have to pay through the nose a lot of the time. It was $600 for 4 nights, which is like, I mean, you could pay. I think there was really expensive ones for like $2,500 to like be on the inside of like turn 2 or something. But like to camp out on a place where you can apparently see the track with $600 for 4 nights. I'm like, that's fairly fucking reasonable. It cost, I think it was $800 for the 3 of us to go for 4 days. Like, sure. Okay. They weren't, paying weren't squeezing. It's an expense, but it's like, it's reasonable. And I know that when we go there, because I went there with Drew last year, I'll buy a hot dog for, probably a crazy amount, like $8, but it won't be, it won't be $20. It won't be the types of prices you do so often see at F1 races.
Although you're missing your opportunity to see what a $280 hot dog looks like.
Could you imagine for 10?
Just the biggest, fattest, girthiest hot dog you've ever seen. Just like
only 2 people can eat it the right way. The other 8 have to eat a hot dog sideways, which seems like
rats.
It seems like a hate crime.
Yeah.
Like rats. Terrible.
But but I think the other part is like, comparatively, any other sport, there are so many, like, America's a big country, but like, you know what I mean? Like, there's going to be a lot of NASCAR races you can attend.
Right.
And,
yeah.
Probably there's one, if you don't get the one nearest you, there's one a little further away, not much less accessible to get to. F1, like, does have the luxury of just being like, we are an international magnet event for some of these things. Like, people will travel halfway across the hemisphere or further to attend these things. So you're not going up against who wants to attend, one of God knows how many NASCAR races there are at this point. You're not going up against that. You're going up against like who wants to attend one of these like 24 races in a season and one of the only like, 2 or 3 in this region.
Yeah, it's special. It's I'm not denying that. It's just it's the fine balance between something being a special event and also people being eye gouged or being their pockets being gouged rather than not being eye gouged. I'm in any context. I don't want any circumstance. I don't want anyone to be eye gouged. Rob, this podcast is going to be our longest ever, even though it was just 2 of us. I don't know how this has happened. We need to get to the last piece of news here. And
yeah, Congress wants to get to the bottom of this Andretti situation,
which is fascinating.
Who knew Congress were Shift F1 listeners or just generally sharing the outrage of how dare F1 not let the Andretti family into F1. But either way, they sent a letter at least to Liberty Media asking for answers about the sports. This is from NBC News. Demand answers about the sports decision to deny Andretti Global a spot on the grid. This is from the chairman of this committee is Jim Jordan, who look him up. He sucks.
Yeah.
He's very selectively interested in investigating abuse of all kinds. If you want to look up his backstory, but also is very selective about what types of like market abuse that he will take seriously. But he, they waded into is F1 being anti-competitive by not letting Andretti in. In this letter they sent to Liberty Media and F1 management, delaying Andretti Cadillac's entry into Formula One for even 1 year will harm American consumers to benefit failing Formula One teams. Limiting the number of teams in Formula One will increase the price of sponsoring or buying into an existing Formula One team. As the committee examines this matter and considers potential legislation around the structure and competition of sports leagues, we write to request a staff-level briefing on the decision to deny Andretti Cadillac's application to join Formula One. And they sort of got into the details of why they found, we went over some of the reasoning that F1 gave about denying Andretti at the time, that they didn't see the value add, that they did not feel that it would, bring significant new interest in a market like the U.S. by having them join. Some of this seemed less than convincing. They want to, Congress is at least threatening to investigate all of it.
Right.
And I'm actually really curious because I think, we've always known, we've talked openly. It's very clear that they just didn't think they want more money to let a new team in or to force people to buy an existing one. But I'm actually not sure if that is their right to do. Like if they had a policy in place, like do they run afoul of U.S. market law if they, basically made the cynical calculation they did around diluting the value of F1. I'm very curious to see if this would go anywhere. If there are if there are antitrust laws on the books that would apply to an organization like F1. It'd be very funny if F1's handling of the Andretti thing and the way they were so like nakedly mercenary about the entire thing, it would be very funny if that blew up in their face like an exploding cigar.
Well, Stefano Domenicali and Greg Maffei have it in their inbox at the moment. The letter has been sent from apparently Jim Jordan, a Drive to Survive fan, according to this NBC News article. So there you go. We will wait. Andretti Watch continues on Shift F1. That's almost time for podcast. Let's get some housekeeping out of the way. Thanks, Rob, by the way. This has been a fun podcast. I missed Drew, but it was nice to spend some quality time with you, little Rob Danny time. It was quite fun. Guess how many teams there was a tie for first? Guess how many teams were tied for first?
I don't think many people have seen Lando winning, so...
Well, you'd be wrong,
3?
Rob. There were 53 teams tied for first on the one that I have here. Unless I'm doing this wrong, I'm here. I can see it. We're on the Shift F1 Podcast 1. We have something like 2,000 people in here, and 53 of them managed to get the winning team, which was Verstappen. Sorry, I'm making sure I'm getting the right one, which was... Am I right? Verstappen with the 2X, Leclerc, Perez, Sainz, and Norris, and then Red Bull and Ferrari. That apparently was the one to go for. So even though Norris won, is that right? Could that be the... Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. No, that's right. That's what it says. Anyway. I'm not going to go through 53 names. That would be absolutely insane.
I don't know. We would set a bar for longest episode that we would never be able to top unless like they introduce a new format like multi-sprint reset weekend.
Okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do it at the end of the podcast when after the Nyum, I'll go through them all so people can listen if they want to. In terms of the rest of the top title, I guess the actual league as it is now, Seat for Sainz is in third. Stroll hats up in second with Obi Guan Yu Jobi. What a fantastic name. still winning. I'll bookmark that so we can go back to it. Emails, shiftf1podcast@gmail.com or f1.cool/emails. We're not doing emails today because it is a post-race week. We will be doing them next week. The next race. What's the next race? I had it written down earlier on. We have no race weekend this weekend. We are back for Emilia-Romagna at Autodromo Enzo Edini Ferrari on Sunday, May 19th, so that'll be next week's episode. Shift F1 podcast on all of the social things. Any final thoughts, Rob Zachney, before we get out of here?
No. I was trying to think of like a pithy summary. I think by and large it was just a really fun weekend, and I don't think it was just down to the fact that misfortune struck Max again, and therefore we got a race that had sort of a live contest at the front for a change of pace. I did kind of come away feeling like there was a lot of interesting stuff happening at pretty much any time during this race weekend, and that's just a good place to be. And I'm really crossing my fingers that those McLaren upgrades are going to change the complexion of the season.
Here's to it. Congratulations, Lando. Congratulations to F1 for giving us a good race weekend. And we will see you guys on the next one. Stay till after the music if you want to hear all these names.
He skipped race around the world. He's got to get out of here.
All right, Rob, you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Just Joe with it. Dirty Marbles. Lewis Leclerc 2025. Team Sandbag. Guan Yu Keep a Secret. Oscar the Grouch. RB Germany. Spelt weird. F1 Racing Team. Lorry Mobile. What's Verstappen? Wincognito. Ben Van Villeneuve. RIPIP Gunther, Take a Stroll, the Go Fast Boys, What's the Racing Point, Vowels for Fouls, There's No Verstappen, Haster Class in Motion, Hamilton in Red, Anita Max Win, Coercive Behavior Racing, Alpha Cash Stake Visa Kick, Maximum Compromise, BNWGSM, Incidental Contact 1, Incidental Contact, I guess, Nefarious Narwhals, Toranga Turbochargers, Catch My Drift, Sweaty Man Convention, Maynard Bylander, Lies and Statistics, Red and Teal Dark Horse, Second Best Loser, Mess_is_lore, Solidus Steak. I like that one. That's pretty good. Little video game one there. Magnum Condoms F1 Team. Fruit of the Neum. That's very good. Arby's Army. Tour Le Lance. Fantastic Prefecture. See, we would have missed out on that had we not read these out. Stud and Duds. $1 to Toto's Swear Jar. Newey's Notebook. No Points, No Good. The Ain't No Stoppins. Williams Spreadsheet Author. Max Verstappening 3. Vince Verstappen. Maximum GP, we're almost there. Scuderia Marbles. Max Floor Slappin'. That's good. Third, Q3's a charm. Chief Kiss, Hate Being Sober. And that's it. That's all of them. That's all 53. Any favorites?
Oh, man. Solid Steak was pretty good.
Solid Steak was pretty good, yeah.
Is there a chance it wasn't Toranga Turbochargers, it was Toranaga?
Oh, it was probably Toranaga Turbochargers. What is that?
Well, that would be a Shogun reference.
Oh, yes. Okay. God. Shogun was great. Did you finish Shogun?
Yeah.
Shogun
was really, really good.
Yeah. I love that guy's accent. Anjin-san. All right. Should we wrap this up?
A lot of fun.
I got to edit this.
Yep.
Okay.
Bye, everyone. Good luck. Go with God.